Okay, picking up where we left off on page 267, we're talking about the truth tables on how to figure out how an or and an and interact. Does both parts have to be true, or just part of it have to be true? And that'll guide you whether or not you need the and function or the or function. Let's talk about logical opposites, because this is a little confusing. Most people, if you ask them, what is the opposite of greater than, they'll say, well, less than. Well, that's not exactly true. The opposite of greater than is less than or equal to. Okay? In other words, if I said less than 12, and you told me the opposite of that was greater than 12, well, what is 12? It's neither, right? So here's how it works. If you're starting with a less than, the logical opposite would be greater than or equal to. Likewise, if it's greater than, it'll be less than or equal to, and the converse is true. The opposite of equals is not equals, woohoo! And the opposite of not equals is equal, woohoo! The opposite of an and is an or. And the opposite of an or is an and. Okay, I know that sounds a little weird. I'm going to go back to this guy. I want to show you a cheat. Remember how we had this thing inside the range and outside the range? Okay. What if I just wanted to know, I already had this one. Let's just say it took me a long time to get this straight. And then after I figured it all out and I got it exactly the way that I wanted, I realized, oh, geez, that's not what I wanted. What I really wanted was the exact opposite of that. Well, a cheat way of doing it is to add the not operator. I can just go right here and say not, and then put this logical piece inside the parentheses. Now, not means just do the opposite of whatever the heck you said. True becomes false, false becomes true. It's just a thing that just flips it around, okay? That is a cool way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to do this thing called the logical opposite, which is what I'm going to show you here. Okay, so to make sure, I'm going to get rid of that not guy, if I can get the cursor to behave. Okay, get rid of this extra parentheses here. Okay, cool. So how do you convert from something that says and D1, which one was this? Greater than or equal to 18, and D1 less than or equal to 25. Okay, we're just going to noodle it out here. I'm not actually going to put it in the formula. So what is the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of and is or. The opposite of greater than or equal to is less than. And the opposite of less than or equal to is greater than. I said that wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so those are logical opposites. The and went to an or, greater than or equal to went to less than or equal to went to greater than. So that's how you convert these guys. So there may be a test question that says, convert this statement to its logical opposite without cheating and using the not operator. Okay, so that's what that thing is all about. Whew. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too weird. So moving along, on page 273, there's a way you can go in and do lots of kind of conditional aggregates. Remember when we were doing counting here? So for example, I say here, I just want to do a count. Remember that? So I just say count, and then just grab this range and go, and it tells me how many there is, right? No big deal. So what if I wanted to know how many of them were greater than 100? Okay, how would you do that? I don't want to sum them up. I want to do a count, but have a conditional. So if that was count, do you think maybe there's a count if? And count if starts with the same thing. Starts with that. And here's the part that's a little weird, okay? Inside here, I have to type that logical expression, you know, that thing, but I'm doing it as a string, okay? So it's a little unusual. Here, these weren't, you know, the greater than, the equal signs were actually in strings. They were not like inside quotes, right? These guys, they are. So I'm going to say, for example, greater than 100, and I'm putting it inside quotes marks. Okay, cool. And the answer is 10. There's 10 of them that are above 100. Okay, that's a little weird. And again, one more time, see, there's no quotes in here, but here there is a quote. Okay. Now here's an odd one. I want to show you I'm going to do another one here. I'm going to do if, not if, count if. Count if, and I'm going to use the same thing. Okay, except now I want the criteria to be relative to one of the things. For example, I want to know if it's greater than that guy at A5. Okay, I want to know if it's greater than it at A5. So what I want to be able to do is do something like this. I want to say greater than A5. That's what I want. Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, because A5, I don't want A5 to look like a string. Right? It's look at these guys and said, man, you're comparing a number to some goofy thing called A5. So what I have to do here is I have to do something different. I have to use some parts of it as string, and then I have to concatenate the parts together. I know this is a little weird, but just bear with me. And there's a glue character. Glue is just a term that I use for when you're trying to stick strings together. And in Excel, it's the ampersand, which is Shift 7. Okay. All right. Right off the bat, you should be able to tell that A5 has turned green. Can you see that? So that means it's live. That means that's not text anymore. This is the text part because it's inside quotes. That's the glue character right there. The glues strings together. And then I have A5. Okay. So I'm gonna hit the button, and there's 8 of them. Let's change. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna change this to 44 just to make sure that I'm not cheating. See, it worked. Okay. So the count if kind of weird because you have to have some things inside quotes, and then perhaps you have other things stuck onto it that are outside the quotes. I know it's a little odd. So. You know, that glue thing that we did here, you know, the glue, the A5, of course, you know, this, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, that's just like percent, you know, that's part of the little ampersand was part of the cell reference. No, that's the glue for gluing strings together. That's all there is. Okay. There's another one called count ifs, plural. And it's essentially the same thing. It just allows you to have multiple criteria. Because this one is pretty simple. You know, there's no nested ifs here going on. But if you did count ifs, plural, you could just have a range of them. You could have them nested just like the nested if. Quite frankly, I rarely see that. But it is in there. Let's do average if. You think there's anything to be learned here? No. It's going to be exactly like you thought. Average if, it's going to be just like before. You grab this guy, go in here and say, I want the average of everything that is, you know, greater than 100. And so it averaged only those things that are greater than 100. Sum if. Okay, I think you got the point, right? I don't need the demo. They're all the same. You do a sum, pick the range, pick the criteria, and presto changes. So, you know, count if, average if, sum if, it's all pretty much the same. You know, if you figured out one of them, then you're good to go. I must admit, you may have, if I'm doing multiples, like count ifs and average ifs, plural, or sum ifs, plural, then yeah, I usually hit the book or hit the help because it's kind of bizarre. I don't use it very often. And so, yeah, I have to go look that up. On page 280, they finally start talking about database functions. And these are kind of sort of similar to the things called conditional aggregates. Remember, things we just talked about here? Except here, I had to type in the formula what my condition was. You know, greater than 100. You know, greater than whatever the value of A5 is, and greater than 100 here. I had to type that in the formula. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if there was a way you could do this, where you could have conditional sums, as an example, but not have to type at all? Okay, this is a little weird, and so the only real way to explain it is to actually do it, because trying to explain it with words is mind-boggling. So I'm just going to go over here and grab from the student data files. I'm going to grab their golf thing, golf sales, because they have a really cool thing. Okay, so here is a transaction thing. All right. So let's say, for example, I wanted to do some conditional formatting. That's a poor choice of words. I wanted to do some analysis. I want to do some what-if analysis on this kind of information. And so what I'm interested in is the retail value. So here's how this thing works. I know this is going to be kind of crazy. All right, so just bear with me. So I want to sum on the retail. I'm gonna find me a blank spot here. Okay. So you guys remember how we turned on row filtering? You know, we grabbed a row and went over here and hit the little filter guy. That's kind of sort of what we're going to do here. So, but I'm just going to grab this as a place to start. I'm just going to grab these headers here and then just paste them up here someplace out of the way. Okay. Now pick a spot. Doesn't really matter where. I'm going to pick right here. And I'm going to start typing my database function, because this top row is going to end up being my filter row. So here's how it works. I'm going to do a dsum, because it's database and a sum. And then I have, the first one is the database. Now the database, to make it a database, it really has to include the headers. So I can't just like start copying like that, because it wouldn't know what anything was. So I have to copy the headers along with it. Otherwise, it's not really a database. It's just a two-dimensional set of rows. Okay, so here's my database. The field, since I'm doing a sum, I need to tell it which one field I want to do this on. And so I'm going to use retail as my field. Okay, there's my field. And then the criteria. And the criteria is this thing that we're making that's going to be like a filter row. So for this filter row to work, I need two rows, the ones with the heading, and then a blank spot underneath it that allows me to type. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this and go. Okay, and then I'm going to close off my parentheses. Okay, now I know that probably was a little confusing, and so this is going to make I promise you, it's going to make a little bit of sense. So for example, let's say I only wanted the retail for the morning shift. I would go here and type the word morning and watch the number, and so it changed. Ooh, what about the morning shift and coupon was local? Okay, so I'm just adding more filters. So this is just like the conditional sum thing. Remember that? Yeah, we just did that last video. We had a sum if kind of a thing, but it was hard coded. You know, this is no different than saying, you know, sum if, you know, shift is equal to morning or coupon test is equal to local. But I would have had to have typed that into the formula. This database thing allows me to just go in there and do all sorts of crazy stuff. You can eventually get this to the point where it won't return anything. Let's go to the trends group and say low. Okay, now I'm down to $14. So, database thing, pretty doggone cool. It is a little weird, just the concepts behind it. So let me go through the concepts one more time. All right, there are three parts to this guy. All right, whether this be dsum or daverage or dmax, dmin, it doesn't matter what the database function is, the functionality is always the same. The first part is the database, and the database is always going to be a two-dimensional rows and columns, right? And it's always going to have headers across the top. And for a database to work, you can't have two headers that have the same thing. You can't say item, and then way over here say item a second time, because it won't be able to tell them apart. Okay, so a database is kind of a special two-dimensional row and column construct. The next one is the field that you're going to use for the sum, the average, the max, whatever it is you're doing. And so I chose retail, which is 08. Okay. If I chose line item total, it would have done line item total. Okay. The third part is a two-dimensional set of headers and a blank spot. Okay, this is probably a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.